some setups that, number one, we announced these events in the blog. So for those of you that do not go to the blog, I would encourage you to go to the Traders Help Desk blog. Sometimes I will only put it on the blog, and other times I will send it out by email. Well, thank you, Juan. I'm glad you joined us this morning. So the first thing I actually would like to do is to go over how you can subscribe to the blog, as well as how you can find things that you are most interested on the blog, because we have about 4 of us that blog, and if you go to the THD website and then click on the blog, it does take you to the actual blog itself. Now there are videos on here as well. For those of you that remember the last special session I had, I told you I was in a trade on the USD JPY. That trade actually did end up taking all 3 clipper levels. Mika has blogged about the T-bonds. In fact, we were blogging about the T-bonds on the 27th of November, and on the 28th of November on, I believe it was CNBC, they were talking about going short on the T-bonds. So I thought that was actually really cute that they came in a day after we did. We also do market reports on the blog, as well as a NASDAQ magenta peak on the THD ADX. Now, the magenta peak on the NASDAQ, it was a red magenta peak, and it was coming in on the weekly chart. So this is why you're seeing the upward movement intraday on the NASDAQ, is because of these magenta peaks on your higher time frames that are pushing price back to the ATR on a higher time frame. Does everybody understand that? This is where you get into the predictive powers of the THD indicators. So all of this is actually on our blog, and in addition to that, I've also linked all of my articles that I wrote for stocks and commodities are now on the blog. If you scroll down, over on the right hand side, there are the articles, and if you click on them, they actually open in a PDF format. Okay, so for those of you that did not get a copy of the volume article, or the article I did on the Russell or the ES or the commodities articles, if you just go over to the right side of the screen, you can actually download those articles now. Okay? Now, let's get back to the NASDAQ. Back on the 20th of November, we were writing that there was a potential magenta peak coming in on the weekly chart. And I really want to show this because it gave you insight as to what was going to happen on the intraday charts. And let me see. Let me remove all the drawing objects that were there from long ago. Now, on the 20th, we actually advised you that a magenta peak had actually come in on the weekly NASDAQ. Now, when a magenta peak comes in on a weekly, we would go down to a 720 if we wanted to trade long term. It will pull back to the ATR, and when it pulls back to the ATR, we want to see diverging volume. So this was considered a red selling bar, and this is your next red selling bar. So you have a very strong divergence there. It did come back, it did test the ATR, and then closed upwards. Now, could you have traded this just from the 720? Of course not, because number one, there would be too much risk on it because that ended up being a wide bar. Could you have gone down in time to even a 45-minute? Yes, you could have in seeing that it was going to pop up from the ATR. Does everybody understand that? Because the reason that we say this is predictive, okay, is because when this magenta peak came in, which was the building of this bar, we can anticipate that it will go back to the ATR, which is at 2784. Okay? And I want to make sure we get that right. Now, when you are dealing with the ATR is moving with price. So although right now it is at 2784, I can already tell you that this will come down even more. So if that's at 2784 right now, I would say 2775, I'm sorry. So, and it may even come a little bit lower than that, okay? So I know that when this price was about 26.15, okay, this magenta peak was coming in. So you've got 26.15 back to 27.75. That's a lot of room for profits, okay? So then we just zero down in time to say, okay, are the lower time frames confirming what we are seeing on the higher time frame? Does everybody understand that? So we're not trading it directly from the weekly. We're saying, okay, there is a potential here for a long on the NASDAQ. But let's go down in time and see if we can actually see the trade coming in. Could you go long once the weekly high of the bar painting the magenta peak is broken? As long as the lower time frames are confirming it, yes, absolutely. Charles, you're asking, would you need to wait for that bar to close up on the 720? No, I would not. And the reason is because the magenta peak was already appearing. Now, I did this, and again, I'm going to go back to the blog for a moment because this one will show you. There was a NASDAQ trade that I took that was actually off of the 720 that I blogged about it. Okay. This morning I was following a 720 magenta peak on the NASDAQ since the ADX magenta peak was coming in on the 720-minute chart. And it was just coming in when I took this trade. I looked to the 45-minute. It came back, tested the ATR here, and it did so on very low volume, okay? So it netted 169 points. Now that was a very long trade. I'm going to tell you right now. It was a long trade because the markets were moving slow. Okay? And that was on the 19th. And if y'all want to watch the video, of course the video is there for you to watch. Okay? So all I'm doing is saying, okay, where are my magenta peaks? Where is price anticipated to go? And once I see that it's going to go there, then I go down in time to verify, yeah, this is acting exactly what I would think it would do. Does everybody understand that? That's really the power behind the THD tools. because otherwise you're just going long or you're going short. But where is it going to go? Well, maybe the last high, maybe the last low. It's guessing games. And I like to say, okay, it's probably going to go here because this is what the THD tools are predicting. Does everybody understand that? All right, now let's look at some stocks. How many of you in here are trading stocks? Stocks, options. Well, options have proved to be very, very lucrative, especially during this turmoil in the markets because the stocks are actually turning the markets. Okay, if you're trading the ES, I don't like the ES, and I've got articles on why. Options are extremely good with this. And again, it comes back to the issue, where is price going to go? Which I'm going to tell you right now, if you're going to trade options, knowing where price is going to go is 75% of the battle. Because then you know, okay, should I take a weekly option or should I take a monthly option? Okay, so let's, for example, BAX, BAX, has just had a magenta peak on it. Okay, so when you look at this and this magenta peak is just now starting to come in, the one thing that I would be looking at right now is you're at an ATR on a 120-minute chart. Okay, so you've already had diverging volume. So can I get a low risk entry here? I would say yes, because you're going to get this for under $1. Could you take an option on this with the anticipation that this is going to continue down? Yeah, you could. Especially because when you stretch this out, you've got this confirmed by short divergence on the weekly. Does everybody understand that? So where should price go? Price should actually pull back to about 60.41. Now remember, there is a time decay in this. So if there is a time decay, I'm going to say, well, it should pull back to 60.41, but I'm going to move it up a little bit and say probably about 62.42. So where is price currently? Price is currently at about 66. Okay, so if it goes down to 62.42, that's what, $3.50? So you could actually take a short option on this and with an intended target of about 62.42. Does everybody understand that? Now, could you further go down in time? Yes. I've got some option traders that actually will scalp options using the same time frames that we use on the NASDAQ. That is for the experienced trader, and we don't go into that in this room. Another one, CTXS. Okay, again, you're getting a magenta peak here. The big thing on this one is that it has went flat. Okay, so I would actually be anticipating this one to actually come back down. Does everybody understand that? Because that is not a true magenta peak. When you get it flat like that, normally it continues down because it is red. Does everybody understand that? When you see a magenta peak, the dot appears, it's not a V formation, and then the line goes flat. Typically, that is indicating that it will come back down. Okay? All right. Now you have DD. Yeah. From the weekly, yes, you would, Gwen. Now, you're also getting a magenta peak here. You would anticipate this right now to go back and test this ATR. It has to do it on diverging volume. And that would give you an entry into, no, sorry, this is a red magenta peak. You can't take a short. You would be looking to go long. Because if this is a red magenta peak, it is not flat. Okay? It will need to flip this ATR again and come back and test the ATR before you could enter that trade. So this one, there's no setup on. Let's go to AES. Okay, you've got the magenta peak on AES. You were looking for it to come back and test the ATR, which it did here. You've had no diverging volume whatsoever because you have to read this as a blue volume bar. So on this one, you have not had an entry. And this has the potential of only pulling back less than $1, so I wouldn't even be interested in it. Okay. Did I check the monthly chart to make sure you aren't competing against a magenta peak on that time frame? No. Because it's going to come in here first and then it will come in on the monthly typically, Chris. Where can you find the article I did on the ES? It is on the blog looking at other markets. Okay. All right. Now this one, you barely have about $2 here, and it's probably going to stop at the SMA, which is at 23.43. So that's about $1.50. Probably this one I would come over here and look at the monthly, because what I would like to do is see if I can get this into the monthly trend, Chris. If you're trading options, you probably should be trading through TradeStation. In all honesty, nobody else gives you the price that I know of that TradeStation does. You know, I was looking at Options Express, very expensive on options. They're like $14.95. TradeStation is $1 an option. A huge difference in prices there. And I don't know of anybody else that gives you the price on options like TradeStation does, Pam. And, you know, at the advanced seminar, we are working a lot with options. Quite a few of our clients are now trading options just because of the predictive powers of the THD indicators. Now, these magenta peaks that are about 5 really don't interest me. Let's look at RHT. Okay, RHT has the potential from 49 up to 54. So this would be one that I could potentially be interested in, and you can see that it gapped up to 50 this morning. So, and it should come back and it should close the gap. Okay, if it does, that's where you're going to get a test of either the SMA or the ATR. Let's go to EMC. You're just now getting the magenta peak again. This gapped up, so you're expecting it to close the gap. If it does, it should come back and test the ATR again. Pretty much the same scenario as what we just looked at. We can also look at CA. You see you have a magenta peak there, and this one, ideally this would have been your entry, but no, it wouldn't be considered high risk because you're still risking less than $1 on this trade. And you can see there's virtually no selling power whatsoever. Okay, if sellers cannot come in and take price down, you would anticipate price going upwards. And that's exactly what it did. And this is a trade that you may be in for a couple of days to maybe a week, depending on how far you are from the ATR. But this is one that actually you've got about $2, a little bit more than $2, about $2.50. Okay, so this is an option that you could have bought going back up to that ATR on the weekly. Does everybody understand that? And actually, the magenta peak was over here. Okay, it's still being displayed in my radar screen. Yeah, the signal, the magenta peak actually came in at the close of this bar, Wepper. Okay, so it's flipped the ATR and then it's come back to test the ATR. Where were the sellers when as it was coming back to test the ATR, Wepper? They're non-existent. Okay, they came in strong and then they just dwindled. Do you see that? Right, you have absolutely no sellers. Okay, so do the buyers step in? Well, the buyers did step in. If you put the clipper on here, I'm not sure I have it set up. Yep, I do. So you enter at 2205. Your stop is 2183. Yeah, you could even set it at 2180. Okay, what is that? 25 cents a share? Your first profit target is 22.39. Now, where is 22.49 going to be at with price? All right. Is your first profit target, okay, is your first profit target before the SMA and the ATR? Yes, it is. The chances of you achieving the first profit target are pretty high. Do you understand that? What index did you use to populate the radar screen? This is a list from TradeStation, Gwen. If you right click in your radar screen, insert symbol list, the TradeStation symbol list, if you go to largest volume stocks and do the largest 5-day average volume, and I did all. Okay? How do you factor in volume? It's very simple. When it's pulling back to the ATR1, is it doing so on the Virgin volume? Okay, so as this is coming back to this ATR, okay, it started the journey to the ATR here. Is your volume increasing on the selling side or is it decreasing? It's decreasing. So this is where you can say, okay, sellers have abandoned this market, so more likely than not, it will go up. And that's further confirmed because as they made this low, again, sellers are not increasing, they're actually decreasing, which is typical trend behavior on the volume. Does everybody understand that? Now, for those of you that do not understand volume, we do have a volume webinar that starts next Tuesday that goes for 3 weeks, that goes hand in hand with the new volume book that I wrote. If you know how to understand volume, yes, the volume bars will tell you if buyers or sellers are driving the price move. Typically, they're always driving it, and those of you that have been through the volume that I teach can read your volume and typically tell is price going to go up or down. How many of you in the room have been to a volume course that I did and it changed the way you traded and saw the market? Okay, Gwen, Stewart, Mika, Mahesh, Charles says it's an excellent webinar, Pam, and Wepper. Now, if you really want to change the way you see your price bars, Casey, it will absolutely change. One, you're not talking about volume analysis, okay? You're talking about order flow. And if the only platforms that I know that actually will do order flow correctly is multi-charts with IQ feed or AMP futures, either one, because AMP uses CQG. There is a difference though in the cumulative delta between CQG data feed and IQ feed. Investor RT, which uses IQ feed, and I believe it's market profile. Oh, it will save you a lot of money. Most definitely, Mika. The cumulative delta indicator, multi-charts 8.5 just released their version with cumulative delta as well as the footprint. Investor RT has it and market profile has it. Now, I know there's a lot of other companies out there that are saying, okay, we can do it, but the data is not there. And I'm just going to be straight up with you. When you sit down and you compare it side by side like I have and our group at Fulcrum Traders has, it's not the same. The data comes from the exchange at that moment in time, Chris. Okay, this is the difference. IQ feed stores it. CQG stores the back data. They're the only two companies that I know that do. For example, TradeStation, when you're talking about order flow analysis, they do snapshots. So it gets a lot more complicated when you get into it. Now, one, you're asking where you can find the cumulative delta indicator. Multi-charts 8.5 now has it, and it will work with CQG or IQ feed. Okay, Investor RT does it, and Market Profile does it. I believe it's Market Profile. Now, one, you said you traded the ES. That makes sense to me why you want to use cumulative delta. If you go to Fulcrum Trader, email Brian. I think his email's on there, and he will probably let you join the room free for 30 days. He can actually tell you how many contracts are still short, how many contracts are still long. I don't go that in depth on the cumulative delta side. It's too complicated for me. I'd never trade. But some people do like that. And Brian can tell you in a heartbeat how many contracts are still holding, how many contracts are still holding short. But again, I'm not in the markets that long. I don't really care how many contracts are still holding. Does that explain it to you, Juan? Is anybody else having trouble with the audio? Okay, Juan, I think it's probably your connection. Because everyone else is able to hear correctly. Even over the Atlantic, Weber. We are really going to miss you, Mike. But we want you to get better too. So, okay, the other one I really want to go over this morning is gold, because I know I have seen a lot of emails on gold. Oh, gold's going up. Oh, gold's going down. Well, gold has actually been in this range here since October of 2011. Okay. So, am I taking a long-term position long? No. Am I taking a long-term position short? No. Because the high of this range has been 1805.5. The low has been 1558.2. Okay? So it has been playing in between this range for the last year. The only trade that I would have taken would have probably been this magenta peak back to the ATR. That was it. Okay, if you want to trade cumulative delta, I would go to my parent site, which is fulcrumtrader.com, and email them. Brian, who runs the room on that one, can help you. He has a lot of different ways for cumulative delta, and that is not volume analysis per se. That is order flow. And order flow just brings in a whole new dimension to your trading. It is very complex, and it does require you to have more screens open. It does require you to use different platforms if you want it done right. It takes a lot of time to master, you're right. Now, I will say this, what I have learned to do with volume analysis came from what I studied in cumulative delta. But cumulative delta, and this is sort of really dependent on the type of trader you are and the way your brain thinks. Some people like to do a lot of analysis. They need that. And cumulative delta is what they need to do. I'm more simple-minded, and I just want something that will get me in and out of the market real quick. So I just do volume analysis. There's no right or wrong here. It's what makes sense to you as a trader. I think volume analysis, if you have never used volume, is really good. Okay. Most of the ones that will go with cumulative delta are engineers. Believe it or not, because they can actually take something as complex as cumulative delta and understand it very easily. I cannot. So, okay, does everybody understand what I have shown on the weekly gold? And this caused really a huge downtrend on your intraday charts, just like it did over here. Okay, so back in October of 2011, we had huge downtrends on gold on the intraday charts because of this magenta peak. Okay, the only thing that I can say that you could actually trade on gold from a weekly would have been this magenta peak here, because it's just playing around these areas. Does everybody understand that? Now, yesterday on the euro, we did end up pulling back to the ATR on the 720. You see that we made a magenta peak back here. It did pull back to the ATR. It did so on diverging volume. What did you expect the euro to do? I expected it to go up. Does everybody understand why I expected it to go up? Where was your entry point? Your best entry point was over here on the 45-minute. Most of you would say, oh, but that's not diverging volume. The volume was increasing. Yes, you're right, it was. And I want to ask you something. If you had at least 50% more sellers coming into this market, why didn't it go lower? I think they call that the hidden buyers in the market. That's right. They cannot take it lower. There had to be buy-in in that bar because they could not take it lower. And the result is almost a Clipper 3 at the moment. Does everybody understand that particular trade? How many of you, why are there blank bars on your volume indicator? Because, and this is actually an excellent question, Casey. This is an inside bar. What does an inside bar tell you? The market's pausing. Buyers did not control the bar. Sellers did not control the bar. The bar was pausing. The market is pausing. It tells you absolutely nothing. I have enough to analyze on my chart without having to analyze a volume bar that makes no difference. Because it really doesn't. It makes no difference whatsoever in your volume analysis. And the reason that it doesn't is because it doesn't tell you were the buyers in control or the sellers in control. Are they increasing or decreasing? Price was an inside bar. It didn't make a high. It didn't make a low. All of my volume analysis is actually done on existing highs and lows. Since price did not make a high, price did not make a low, I don't need to analyze it. It's insignificant to me. Now, how many of you were in the room when I was in the USD JPY trade? Now, I was already in it. It came back to the ATR here, made a magenta peak, pulled back to the ATR, did so on the Virgin volume, entered, and that took a Clipper 3. That was on the USD JPY. Okay, if you remember correctly, the USD JPY and the Aussie JPY were the only two bright blue in my weeklies. Does everybody remember that? This maybe 2, 3 weeks ago. Okay. Well, I can't go. I tell you what, let me close the stock workspace because it's causing the sound to go out. Okay. Now, that was only on the USD JPY and on the Aussie JPY. Most of you will remember that. Okay. Let's go back and look at what the Euro JPY did. Okay. The Euro JPY pulled right back to the slow moving average on the Virgin volume. This was a Clipper 3. This came in after the USD JPY trade. Let's go to the British pound yen. The same exact setup. Again, you've got diverging volume here. Right at the SMA, this was a Clipper 3. This came in after the USD JPY trade that I showed y'all. Swiss franc JPY. Do you see this exact same setup, guys? Pulls back to the slow moving average. You get the magenta peak. What does the magenta peak tell you? The magenta peak tells you it's coming back to the ATR. This is a very low risk entry point. Again, this gave you a Clipper 3. On this one, I actually did use the 1440 mic because I was going into the trend of the weekly. And finally, what do you see on the New Zealand? Exactly the same setup. The only difference here, it pulls back to the ATR. You had to know that this was a red volume bar. Okay? The reason that this is a red volume bar is because this closed at the very bottom. Okay? So this is diverging volume and then it goes up again. That was just using the USD JPY as a catalyst for all of these other yen pairs. Does everybody understand that? You're getting very, very low risk entry point into these 1440s. And I like to do the spot forex more long term. Okay? Just because of the cost. Right, all of the JPY pairs, Wepper. In fact, they were pretty much the only ones that were really moving good. Okay, you don't really have volume on spot forex, Pam. All you have is tick count. Okay, so what you have to do in TradeStation is right click on your chart, go to format symbol, and set for volume use tick count. Now, you cannot get volume on the weeklies and the monthlies because they don't keep track of the tick count for that long. Now, another way to do it, which I don't have open, is just to trade the euros. Do we? I don't think so, Mika. But could you trade options, forex options this way? Yeah, you can. The same concepts apply. So does everyone understand how we could identify these trades? It's sort of like all of them that are USD based. If the US dollar is going down, then typically it's going down across the pairs. Typically. Now, there are some cases where it won't, but typically if the US dollar is weak, then the other currency is strong. Yeah, opportunities are abundant, and because the market has been moving slow during the holiday season and all, I've been focused more on a longer term chart than I have on the intraday charts. Did the USD JPY, also did the euro because I knew the euro was going up. So I went longer term on it as well. But there's multiple opportunities, and using the radar screen really shows you what is going on. This allows us to say, okay, where is price going to? Instead of just guessing and saying, okay, I want $2 off of this. Well, is $2 reasonable? You don't know. The ATR does give us uh, a heads up as to where it's going. And if your higher time frame is actually in a strong trend, if it comes back to the ATR, then we would also know, okay, it's going to take out the previous high. Good morning, Rick. How are you doing this morning? I'm just doing hunky dory. One of the things that when you get up in the morning, the first screen that you should actually look at to me is the radar screen. And for those of you that are attending the seminar next week, you're going to have a lot of exercises with the radar screen. It's going to ingrain in you how to use this radar screen. Because this is the first screen you should actually look at when you get up in the morning. For example, right now the Swiss franc is about 5 ticks away from making a magenta peak. Okay. Gold has made a magenta peak, actually a very strong magenta peak, which should throw the 3-minute into a downtrend. And it did. Because this was a blue magenta peak, is rated very high because it was 17.9. And you actually have a 78 right now on the 3-minute that's red. So this was telling you that the 3-minute was going to give you a downtrend. This is confirming that it did. And you're probably going to get a magenta peak on that now because you're getting long divergence. Okay, on the Euro 45-minute is currently at 65. It's 6 ticks away, 7 ticks from making a magenta peak. Okay, what does that mean? That means that you're going to get a magenta peak that will cause a downtrend on a 3-minute. Does everybody understand that? I don't need to look at a chart to know that information. The Aussie, you're probably going to get a magenta peak because it's at 90 right now. You're going to get a magenta peak that's going to cause it to go upwards. It's under the community mic. We do have, if you are a member of THD, we do have some videos over on the community side that goes over radar screen. And I will be doing more videos after next week for the radar screen as well. Okay, does anybody have any questions this morning on anything that I have gone over? For those of you that are looking to sign up for the volume analysis webinar, Um, you will need to sign up before tomorrow evening. This one will be posted on the blog, Casey. Now, again, if you go to the blog, we've made it very easy for y'all to get to the information. If you go up here to where it says tags, there is a video tag. Okay, so if you click on videos, then you can see all of the videos that are actually there. Okay. My assessment of the overall market. I think the overall on the market one is probably going to be, right now it's moving upwards on anticipation of a deal being reached on the fiscal cliff. I don't think they're going to reach it within the end of December. I think they're going to do it last minute. So as it gets closer and closer, the market will probably start going down severely because they realize, okay, we're not going to come with it with some type of arrangement. So, and then I think the market's going to tank, and then they're going to come out with a deal, and the market's going to go up. But you're getting a lot of spikes because our great political leaders that we have are coming out during the middle of the day talking and giving us their opinions, and the market's reacting to this. So intraday, it's a little bit hard to trade it. You know, we're paying attention a lot to the bonds, just because I think as it gets closer on the bond market, it may actually go up. When people start realizing, okay, they may not come out with a solution, I think more people are going to start investing in bonds. And if you're trading intraday, just expect spikes. It was like, I believe it was late yesterday, somebody came out and said that the House of Representatives refused to sign the agreement to extend the Bush cuts to people that make under $250,000. You can expect spikes off of stupid statements like that. And it's going to be a lot of that for the next 30 days, unfortunately. You know, I don't think any of them should be allowed to go home for Christmas until they work out the deal, but you know, that's based on a typical business scenario, and they're not approaching it like a business scenario. I think they just need to sit their ass in Washington until they actually do it. Well, yeah, I think we should just cancel it. You know, yeah. I have some really, really uh, good views on what Congress should do. Okay. Well, I don't think, you know, if they're not doing their job, they shouldn't get paid. That's exactly my feelings on it, Evelyn. Oh, I don't think they should be given bonds. They're not doing their damn job. You know, I think they have to give all of that up. I was reading yesterday that back in the 1800s, their salary, they had a per diem of 6,000 per year. I think we need to go back to that, evidently. Well, they're well on their way to doing that already. Now, we all know they're going to come up with a solution. We're not stupid and we know this. But will they wait to the absolute last minute? Of course they will. It's Congress. I don't like it that they may increase my tax, but let's face it, we spent the money, so we have got to pay it. It they did spend the money, you know. You don't need the DMI column at all, Wepper, if you know how to read the radar screen. The information is already there for you. We talked about that, remember, Wepper? If I have a value of 65 and it is bright blue, what color is the histogram, guys? Everybody that has the THD indicator should know that. The histogram would have to be magenta. That's right. It's the only color it could be if it is a bright blue 65 value. Now, if it was a dark blue 65, that tells me there was a magenta peak somewhere in the background because it is dark blue going down. You see that right now on the Swiss franc 45 minute. You're fixing to get a magenta peak on the 3 minute. In fact, you're about 4 ticks away from getting a magenta peak on the Swiss franc. Okay. You're getting a magenta peak on the 3 minute Aussie. You'll probably get one on the 12 minute as well because you're 9 ticks away from making the magenta peak. And you're already getting long divergence. And the neat thing is we actually, and we show this a lot, using a 3, a 12, and a 45. But I want y'all to expand your thinking for a moment, okay? We have set this ADX up where you can send an alert to your cell phone, to your email, on weeklies, on dailies, on monthlies. That's the reason I don't miss magenta peaks, guys. Yes, it will be sent to your email. The book is an ebook and it is personalized for each individual customer. Oh, you'll know the radar screen, believe me. Let me tell you what you're going to do. This is a heads up on everybody that's coming to the advanced seminar. This is what you're going to be doing. Okay? I'm going to put up a radar screen on a market and you're going to have to draw the chart for me. And you will not have your computer open, I guarantee you. The volume book is personalized for each individual client, Gwen. And you should be able to do it. In all honesty, you should be able to do that. And I'll teach you how. Yeah, it is, Gwen. Yeah, you will be visualizing. Gwen, it's not. There's a reason. You should be able to visualize each chart just by seeing the radar screen. I can tell you how far price is from the ATR, from the SMA, if we're fixing to make a magenta peak, and what the volume even looks like. It tells you right there. You're looking at it right now. I can tell you every market's got long divergence on it right now at the ATR, and I can also tell you which charts have divergence at the SMA as well. You don't need to open up your chart to look at it. You should be able to look at it from here. It's all right there in front of you. And if you're out on the golf course playing golf, okay, and you've been waiting for a magenta peak to come in on Apple, well, if you're using the alert function, you would already know that. And that's, longer term trading. That's never missing one of these magenta peaks that causes an, a trend on the smaller time frames. You don't have your what yet, Casey? Okay, let's go to the Euro 3 minute. You're 6 ticks away from making an ATR and you're already getting long divergence. Okay? And this is on the 3 minute. You're 1 tick away from the SMA. And now you're right at the SMA. Do you see how the magenta peak just came in? The reason it's registering long divergence is right here. Okay? And you have another high right here. Is it increasing volume or decreasing volume? It's decreasing. It's come right back to the same area of this high, okay, but on less volume. So actually, this may hold. Now, I don't need to look at the chart to see all of this right now. It tells you right here on the radar screen. Okay, I'm going to end the session so y'all can get ready to trade the 9:30 session. I do appreciate all of you joining us this morning. And remember, next week there will not be any live trading rooms because we will be in the advanced seminar. We will have the volume webinar Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Rick, can you give me a call? Do you have my cell phone number? Yeah, please.